The deep space scanner on the Zephyrian research vessel beeped 3 times. Senior Navigator Kethvar looked up from his console, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The sound meant only one thing. They had found something big. Dr. Yixtal, you need to see this, Kethvar called across the bridge. His voice carried the musical tone that all Zephyrians used when excited. The hegemony scientist moved quickly to the scanner station. Her gray skin seemed to glow under the blue bridge lights. She was the best xenoarchaeologist in 3 sectors, and this mission to study the empty space between galaxies was her idea. What are we looking at? Dr. Yixtal asked, peering at the display. Energy readings. Very old, but still active. The signature is unlike anything in our databases. Kethvar pointed to the swirling patterns on his screen. It's massive, at least 20 kilometers long. Dr. Yixtal felt her heart skip a beat. In 30 years of deep space research, she had never seen anything like this. The energy pattern was steady but weak, like the dying breath of some great machine. Can you determine the origin? She asked. Running analysis now, Kethvar replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. The materials, and this is strange. I'm detecting metals and composites from dozens of different worlds. It's like someone built this thing from spare parts. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's engines. The crew of the Twilight's Edge had been in deep space for 6 months, studying cosmic radiation between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. They expected to find nothing but empty void and ancient starlight. Distance? Dr. Yixtal asked. 2 hours at full speed. Should we investigate? Dr. Yixtal considered the risks. They were far from any help if something went wrong, but the chance to study an unknown artifact was too good to pass up. Yes. Set course for the energy source, and send a message probe back to command. Let them know what we found. The Twilight's Edge changed direction, its sleek hull cutting through the darkness. As they drew closer, the object began to appear on their visual scanners. By the void, whispered Communications Officer Velara. Look at the size of that thing. The ship that filled their screens was like nothing any of them had ever seen. It was massive and angular, built for function rather than beauty. The hull was covered in patches and repairs, as if it had been damaged and fixed countless times over many years. I'm detecting life signs, reported tactical specialist Korthak. His warrior instincts made him nervous about approaching unknown vessels. Thousands of them, but they're different somehow. Different how? Dr. Yixtal moved to his station. The biological patterns are consistent with humans, but there are strange energy readings mixed in. Some of the life signs appear normal, but others... Korthak paused, checking his instruments again. Others seem wrong somehow, like they've been changed. Dr. Yixtal studied the readings. Humans were a relatively new species to the galactic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago. But this ship looked much older than that. Can you date the construction? She asked Kethvar. Based on the decay patterns in the hull materials, I'd estimate this vessel has been in space for over 1,000 years. But that's impossible. Humans didn't have space travel technology that long ago. The mystery deepened as they circled the massive ship. It showed signs of ongoing maintenance, but also incredible age. Weapons ports dotted the hull, some sealed, others still active. Docking bays large enough to hold smaller vessels were scattered along its length. I'm picking up power signatures from multiple reactors, reported Chief Engineer Zaltok. This ship is still running, but barely. Life support appears to be functioning in several sections. Dr. Yixtal made her decision. Prepare a boarding party. We're going inside. Are you sure that's wise? Korthak asked. We don't know what we'll find in there. That's exactly why we need to look, Dr. Yixtal replied. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. They spent the next hour preparing. The boarding party would consist of Dr. Yixtal, Korthak, Velara, and 2 security specialists. They wore full environmental suits and carried translation devices in case they encountered living humans. The Twilight's Edge docked with what appeared to be an airlock on the massive ship's lower hull. The metal around the docking port was scarred, and repaired many times over. Atmosphere is breathable for humans, reported Valara as they prepared to enter. Oxygen levels are low but stable. Temperature is cold but within acceptable ranges. Any response to our docking? Dr. Yixtal asked. None. Either they don't know we're here, or they're choosing not to respond. The airlock cycled, and the boarding. Party stepped into the unknown ship. The corridor they entered was dimly lit by emergency lighting. The walls were covered with patches and repairs, but everything appeared functional. This way, Korthak said, checking his scanner. I'm detecting a larger group of life signs about 200 meters forward. They moved carefully through the corridors. The ship felt alive around them, with the constant hum of machinery and the distant sound of air circulation systems. But there was something else, a tension in the air like the calm before a storm. Look at these walls, Valara said, running her hand over the metal. These aren't battle damage repairs. This is maintenance work, done over many years. Someone has been taking care of this ship for a very long time. They reached a junction where several corridors met. Signs in human writing pointed in different directions, but the words were in an ancient dialect that their translators struggled with. Medical, engineering, command. Dr. Yixtal read slowly. This is definitely a human ship, but it's old. Very old. A sound echoed through the corridor. The distant clang of metal on metal. Then voices, human voices, speaking in urgent tones. Someone's coming, Korthak warned, raising his weapon. Lower your weapon, Dr. Yixtal ordered. We're here to learn, not to fight. Footsteps approached and 3 figures rounded the corner. They were human, but unlike any humans the aliens had seen before. Their clothes were patched and worn, their faces marked by hardship and determination. They carried weapons, but held them in a non-threatening manner. The leader was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked at the alien visitors with surprise, but not fear. I'm Captain Jake Morrison, he said in accented but clear standard Galactic. Welcome to the Endurance. We've been waiting a long time for someone to find us. Dr. Yixtal stepped forward, her translator converting her words to human speech. I am Dr. Yixtal of the Hegemony Science Council. We detected your ship's energy. Signature. How long have you been out here? Captain Morrison's expression grew sad. Time is hard to measure in the void, but according to our records, we've been traveling for 1,043 years. The aliens looked at each other in amazement. A human ship lost in space for over a millennium, still functioning and still inhabited. What happened to you? Dr. Yixtal asked gently. Captain Morrison's hand tightened on his weapon. In the distance, an alarm began to sound. That's a long story, Doctor, and I'm afraid we don't have much time. The war never stops, you see. It just pauses now and then. As if summoned by his words, the sound of running feet and shouting voices echoed through the corridors. The 1,000-year battle was about to begin again. Captain Jake Morrison led the alien visitors through the corridors of the Endurance as alarms continued to sound in the distance. The ship felt like a living thing around them, with the constant hum of machinery and the echo of footsteps on metal floors. Stay close, Morrison said, his weathered face showing concern. The lower levels are not safe right now. We need to get you to the secure sections. Dr. Yixtal and her team followed the human captain through a maze of corridors. The ship was much larger inside than they had imagined. Every surface showed signs of careful maintenance and repair. Pipes and cables ran along the walls, all clearly marked with human writing. How many people live on this ship? Valara asked, her translator making her words sound mechanical to human ears. About 15,000 in our sections, Morrison replied. Give or take a few hundred. Births and deaths happen every day. They passed through several security checkpoints where armed humans nodded respectfully to their captain. The aliens noticed that everyone they saw looked alert and ready for trouble. Even the children they glimpsed seemed older than their years. Here we are, Morrison said, leading them into a large room filled with computer screens and control panels. This is our main operations center. A woman in her 40s looked up from a console. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style. and her clothes were clean but clearly repaired many times. She studied the alien visitors with curious but cautious eyes. Chief Engineer Lisa Carter, Morrison said by way of introduction. Lisa, these are our first visitors in, well, ever. Lisa Carter stood and offered a formal greeting. Welcome to the Endurance. I hope you can help us understand what's happening out in the galaxy. We've been cut off from home for a very long time. Dr. Yixtal stepped forward. We represent the Galactic Hegemony, a union of species working together for peace and progress. When did you last have contact with Earth? The two humans looked at each other sadly. Morrison spoke first. Earth doesn't exist anymore, not the way we knew it. That's why we're here, in the void between galaxies. We're all that's left. The aliens felt a chill at these words. The complete destruction of a homeworld was something they had encountered before, but it was always tragic. What happened? Korthak asked, his warrior training making him direct. Lisa. Carter activated a wall screen. Images appeared showing a beautiful blue world covered in cities and green spaces. This was Earth, our home. We were not alone there. Another species lived with us, but we didn't know it for a long time. The image changed to show strange, dark creatures with too many teeth and glowing eyes. They looked like nightmares made real. We called them the Devourers, Morrison continued. They had been hiding in the deep places of our world for millions of years. When humanity finally found them, they were already everywhere. In our cities, our governments, our families. They could take human form? Dr. Yixtal asked, studying the images. Not exactly, Lisa explained. They infected humans, changed them from the inside. The infected people kept their memories and intelligence, but they became something else. Something hungry. More images flashed on the screen showing the war that followed. Cities burning, humans fighting humans, massive ships leaving Earth as the world died below them. The war lasted 50 years, Morrison said quietly. In the end, we had to choose between saving some of our people or losing everyone. The fleet carried 2 million humans away from Earth. We were supposed to find a new world and start over. But something went wrong, Lisa continued. The Devourers had infected some of the people on the ships. By the time we discovered this, it was too late. The infection spread through most of the fleet. Dr. Yixtal began to understand the tragedy. How many ships survived? Just this one, Morrison replied. The Endurance was built to be completely self-sufficient. When the infection started spreading, we sealed ourselves off from the other ships and ran for deep space. That was 1,000 years ago, Lisa added. We've been fighting the same war ever since. The aliens looked confused. Velara asked the obvious question. Fighting who? You said the other ships were lost. Morrison's expression grew grim. The infected are still with us. They're in the lower levels of this ship. We couldn't bring ourselves to kill them all. They're still human after all. But we can't let them spread either. A young man appeared in the doorway, breathing hard from running. He saluted Morrison quickly. Captain, the corrupted are moving again. 3 groups trying to reach the upper levels. We need reinforcements. At checkpoints 7, 12, and 15. Morrison turned to the aliens. This is Lieutenant Ben Clark, our communications officer. Ben, these are visitors from outside. They found us. Ben's eyes widened with surprise and hope. Really? Are their ships coming to help us? We're still learning about your situation, Dr. Yixtal said gently. Tell us about these corrupted. Morrison gestured for them to follow him to another part of the operations center. A large screen showed a map of the entire ship, with different colors marking different areas. The green areas are under our control, Morrison explained. The red areas belong to the corrupted. The yellow zones are contested. We fight for them every day. The map showed that the ship was roughly divided, in half. The upper levels were mostly green while the lower levels were predominantly red. But there were patches of yellow throughout, showing that the battle lines were complex and ever-changing. Why don't you just seal off the lower levels? Korthak asked. Cut them off completely? Lisa Carter shook her head. We can't. Both sides need the ship's main systems to survive. The reactor cores, the water recycling, the air processors, they're scattered throughout the ship. If either side gained complete control, the other would die. And if we damage too many critical systems, fighting each other, we all die. So you've reached a stalemate, Dr. Yixtal observed. More than that, Morrison said. We've learned to coexist in a strange way. We fight during the day, but at night we often work together to repair the ship. The corrupted may be changed, but they're not stupid. They know that if the Endurance dies, they die too, Ben Clark added. Some of us even talk to them during the ceasefires. They remember their families, their lives before the infection. It's heartbreaking. The aliens tried to process this information, a species that had been at war with itself for 1,000 years but had found a way to keep both sides alive. It was unlike anything in their databases. How do you maintain hope? Velara asked. How do you keep going? Morrison walked over to another screen that showed star charts and navigation data. Because we still believe we'll find a new home someday. Every generation has added to these charts marking systems that might have habitable worlds. We've never stopped looking. Lisa pointed to a corner where several children were working at smaller consoles. They couldn't have been more than 10 years old, but they handled the equipment with practiced skill. Those kids have never known anything but this ship, she said. But they still dream of walking under open sky someday. That's what keeps us going. An older woman approached the group. Her hair was completely gray, but her eyes were bright with intelligence. Dr. Mary Johnson, Morrison introduced her, our head of education. I've been teaching the children about the worlds we might find, Mary said to the aliens. Based on the old databases and our observations, they learn about forests and oceans and mountains even though they've never seen any of these things. Dr. Yixtal was amazed. You've maintained your culture and education for 1,000 years under these conditions? We've had to adapt, Mary replied. Classes are held in whatever safe spaces we can find. Sometimes we have to stop lessons to help repair battle damage, but we never stop teaching. Knowledge is what makes us human. Another alarm sounded, this one louder and more urgent. Morrison's expression immediately became serious. Major assault, Ben reported, reading his instruments. They're hitting checkpoints 7 and 12 simultaneously. Morrison turned to the aliens. I'm sorry, but we need to respond to this. The war doesn't wait for anyone. Can we observe? Dr. Yixtal asked. We want to understand what you're facing. Morrison considered this carefully. It's dangerous, but if you really want to help us, you need to see what we're up against. He led them toward the door. Welcome to the Endurance. Try to keep up. Captain Morrison led the alien observers through corridors that grew darker and more damaged as they descended into the contested zones of the Endurance. The sounds of battle grew louder with each step, the crack of energy weapons, the shouts of fighters, and the metallic clang of hand-to-hand combat. Stay behind the cover points, Morrison instructed as they approached checkpoint 12. The corrupted are good shots, and they know this ship as well as we do. They reached a reinforced position where a dozen humans had taken cover behind metal barriers. The defenders wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that looked both advanced and ancient at the same time. Captain on deck, called out a young woman with sergeant's stripes on her sleeve. She was maybe 25 years old, with short, blonde hair and scars on her face that spoke of many battles. Report, Sergeant Amy Foster, Morrison said, crouching beside her. 3 waves so far, Amy replied, checking her weapon. They're trying to reach the water processing center. If they take it, they can cut our supply to the upper residential sections. Morrison nodded grimly. How many? About 40 in the first group. We stopped them at the junction, but they pulled back to regroup. They'll be back soon. Dr. Yixtal studied the defensive position. The humans had turned a simple corridor into a fortress with overlapping fields of fire and multiple fallback positions. Everything was built from salvaged materials, but it was clearly effective. There, Amy pointed down the corridor. Movement at the far intersection. The aliens saw them then, the corrupted. At first glance, they looked completely human. They moved with intelligence and purpose, using cover and tactics just like the defenders. But there was something wrong. about the way they moved, something that made the alien's skin crawl. They look normal, Valara whispered. That's what makes them so dangerous, Morrison replied. They have all their human memories and skills, but they're driven by something else now. Something hungry. The battle began suddenly. Energy bolts flew down the corridor as both sides opened fire. The corrupted advanced using military tactics, but there was something inhuman about their persistence. They took losses that would break most forces, but kept coming. Second wave incoming, Amy shouted. They're flanking through the maintenance tunnels. More humans arrived to reinforce the checkpoint. The aliens watched in amazement as fighters as young as 16 took positions alongside veterans. Everyone seemed to know exactly what to do. A man in his 30s with dark hair and lieutenant's bars ran up to Morrison. Captain, they're hitting checkpoint 7 even harder. Lieutenant Sam Torres is requesting immediate reinforcement. Take third squad, Morrison ordered. And tell Sam to fall back to secondary positions if he has to. We can't lose those people. The lieutenant nodded and ran off with half the defenders. The position suddenly seemed much more vulnerable. Sir, Amy called out. They're pulling back again, but this time they're not going far. Morrison studied the tactical situation. They're planning something big. Amy, get me a line to the lower command center. Amy activated a communication device that crackled with static. A voice came through, distorted but clearly human. Morrison, this is Commander Ryan Hayes. We need to talk. The aliens looked at each other in surprise. The enemy leader was calling for a parley in the middle of battle. Hayes, Morrison responded. Your people are hitting our water supply. That violates the survival compact. Your people cut power to our medical section. Yesterday, Hayes replied. 3 of our sick died because the life support failed. Morrison's face showed genuine regret. That was a mistake during the power rerouting. We sent repair teams as soon as we realized. I know, Hayes said. Your chief engineer, Lisa Carter, came down personally to fix it. She could have been killed, but she came anyway. Dr. Yixtal leaned closer to Morrison. You communicate with them regularly? Morrison nodded. Ryan Hayes was my second in command before the infection took him. He's been leading the corrupted for over 20 years now. We've learned that talking is better than just killing each other. Hayes' voice came through the communicator again. We need to discuss the reactor maintenance schedule. Core 3 is showing stress fractures. Agreed, Morrison replied. Ceasefire in 30 minutes for joint repair work? Confirmed. But Morrison, my people are hungry. The situation in the lower levels is getting desperate. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. I know. We're working on increasing food production in the hydroponics bays. It's not just food they're hungry for, Hayes said quietly. You know what I mean. The communication ended, leaving an uncomfortable silence. Amy Foster looked at her captain with sad eyes. The infection is getting worse, isn't it? Morrison nodded. The corrupted need to feed on human life force to survive. They've been fighting that urge for generations, but it's getting harder for them. Korthak, the alien tactical specialist, tried to understand. Why don't you simply eliminate them? You have the superior position. Because they're still people, Amy answered before Morrison could speak. My great-grandmother was one of them. She fought the hunger until the day she died. Some of the corrupted have managed to stay mostly human for decades. Morrison gestured for the aliens to follow him to a quieter area. Come on. There's someone you need to meet. They walked through the ship's corridors to a section marked with medical symbols. The area was cleaner than the rest, with better lighting and equipment that looked more advanced. A man in his 40s with a doctor's coat approached them. His name tag read, Dr. Paul Stevens. He looked tired, but determined. Doctor, these are our visitors from outside, Morrison said. They're trying to understand our situation. Dr. Stevens nodded to the aliens. Welcome to our medical center. I suppose you want to know about the infection? If you're willing to share, Dr. Yixtal replied carefully. Dr. Stevens led them to a laboratory where samples and data were displayed on screens. The devourer infection changes human DNA at the cellular level. The infected retain their memories and personality, but they develop an overwhelming need to consume life energy from other humans. Is there a cure? Velara asked. We've been working on it for 1,000 years, Dr. Stevens replied sadly. Some treatments can slow the progression, but we've never found a way to reverse it completely. He showed them brain scans comparing normal humans to the infected. The changes affect the limbic system and parts of the brain that control hunger and aggression. But here's the remarkable thing. Many of the corrupted have learned to control these urges through pure willpower. Morrison added, That's why we can't just kill them all. They're fighting a war inside themselves every day, and many of them are winning. A young technician approached the group. He was tall and thin, with the focused look of someone who spent his time with machines rather than people. This is Ben Clark, Dr. Stevens introduced him. One of our best technical specialists. He maintains the communication systems between all sections of the ship. Ben nodded shyly to the aliens. I've been monitoring the corrupted communications for years. You'd be surprised how often they talk about missing the sun or wondering what trees smell like. They remember being human, yet they still fight you, Korthak observed. Because they have to, Morrison explained. The infection drives them to try to spread. It's not really their choice anymore. But during the ceasefires, we sometimes work side by side to keep the ship running. Dr. Stevens pulled up more data on his screens. The corrupted have actually helped us solve several critical engineering problems over the years. Their altered brain chemistry allows them to think in ways that normal humans can't. They've saved the ship more than once. An announcement echoed through the medical center. All sections, ceasefire in 10 minutes. Prepare for joint maintenance. Operations on Reactor Core 3. Morrison checked his watch. This happens every few days. We stop trying to kill each other long enough to keep our home from falling apart. It sounds impossible, Dr. Yixtal said. It is impossible, Amy Foster replied, having followed them to the medical center. That's what makes it human. They walked to an observation window that looked down into the ship's reactor section. Aliens could see both normal humans and the corrupted working side by side on the massive machinery. The two groups wore different colored uniforms, but they shared tools and communicated freely. Look at that. Ben pointed to a work team. The woman in blue is Janet Miller, one of our best engineers. The man in red working with her is her brother, Danny. He was infected 15 years ago. The aliens watched as the siblings worked together to replace damaged components. They moved with practiced coordination, clearly comfortable with each other despite being on opposite sides of a war. They meet like this whenever we have joint maintenance, Morrison explained. Families torn apart by the infection, but still connected by love. How do you bear it? Velara asked. Morrison's expression became distant. Because the alternative is giving up, and humans don't give up. We find a way to keep going no matter what. Dr. Stevens added, We've been documenting everything for 1,000 years. Every battle, every temporary peace, every small victory and loss. Someday when we find a new world, we'll remember this time and know what we're capable of. During the ceasefire, Captain Morrison led the alien visitors deeper into the residential sections of the Endurance. Here, the ship felt more like a living city than a military vessel. Children played in the corridors while their parents worked to maintain their small community. This is what we're really protecting, Morrison said as they walked past a group of young children learning basic mathematics from their teacher. Not just our lives, but our future. The aliens watched in fascination as a 10-year-old girl named Amy Foster helped her younger brother Danny with his lessons. Between math problems, the children practiced emergency procedures and basic self-defense moves. It was their normal life. How do you raise children in constant danger? Dr. Yixtal asked. A woman in her 30s approached them. She had kind eyes but carried a weapon at her side. I'm Mary Johnson, head of education. We teach them everything. History, science, literature, and survival skills. They need to be ready for anything. Mary led them to a larger room where about 30 children of various ages were gathered. The youngest was maybe 5 years old, the oldest around 16. They all looked up with bright, curious eyes when the aliens entered. Children, these are our first visitors from outside the ship, Mary announced. They've come from the stars to meet us. A boy about 12 years old raised his hand. Are there other humans out there, ones who aren't fighting? Dr. Yixtal looked at Morrison, unsure how to answer. Morrison nodded encouragingly. There are humans on many worlds, Dr. Yixtal said gently. They live in peace and build wonderful things. The children's eyes lit up with wonder and hope. A girl about 14 asked, Do they have forests? Real ones with animals and rivers? Yes, Velara replied. There are worlds with forests so vast you could walk for days and never see the end. The children began asking more questions, each one revealing how much they dreamed of a world beyond their metal walls. They asked about oceans and mountains, about what rain felt like and whether the sky was really blue. We teach them about these things, Mary explained to the aliens, even though they've never seen them. We have old recordings from Earth and we make sure every child knows what we're hoping to find. A teenager named Kevin Miller approached the group. He was tall for his age and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen combat. I'm training to be a scout, he said, proudly. Someday I'll help explore our new world. Kevin is one of our best students, Mary said. He knows the ship better than most adults and he can handle himself in a fight if necessary. Morrison added, All of our young people serve in some capacity. Julia Parker over there is training as a medic. Tony Martinez wants to be an engineer. Like his mother, the aliens observed how naturally the children moved between learning and preparation for war. It was heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. Don't they ever get scared? Korthak asked. A girl about 16 with short dark hair answered before the adults could. I'm Julia Parker. Of course we get scared. But being scared doesn't mean we give up. Our parents taught us that courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you are afraid. Dr. Yixtal was struck by the wisdom in such young words. How do you maintain hope when you've never known anything but this ship? An older boy, maybe 17, stepped forward. I'm Tony Martinez. We maintain hope because our parents and grandparents never stopped believing. They told us stories about the worlds we might find. They showed us the star charts and taught us to dream. Mary Johnson smiled proudly at her students. Every generation adds to our knowledge and our dreams. The children born today will know things that we never learned. They'll be ready to build something beautiful when we find our new home. Morrison gestured for the aliens to follow him to another section. They passed through areas where adults were working, some repairing equipment, others growing food in hydroponic gardens, still, others creating art and music to keep their culture alive. This is Nina Brooks. Morrison introduced them to a woman working at a navigation console. Our chief navigator. She's been plotting courses to potentially habitable systems for the past 15 years. Nina looked up from her charts. She was in her 40s, with graying hair and the focused look of someone who carried enormous responsibility. Every day we get a little closer to our destination, she said. We've identified 17 systems that might have worlds we could settle. How do you choose? Velara asked. We look for systems with stable stars and planets in the right zone for liquid water, Nina explained. But we also hope for worlds that are beautiful. Our children deserve more than just survival. They deserve wonder. They continued their tour, meeting more of the ship's inhabitants. Dr. Paul Stevens showed them the medical facilities where both normal humans and the infected were treated during ceasefires. Chief Technical Officer Ben Clark demonstrated the communication systems that kept all sections of the ship connected. The remarkable thing, Ben explained, is how we've all adapted. The corrupted have learned to control their hunger most of the time. We've learned to fight when necessary and cooperate when survival demands it. They visited the workshops where engineer Sam Torres and her team maintained the ship's countless systems. The aliens watched in amazement as humans worked with tools and materials that were centuries old, keeping everything running through skill and determination. We've become experts at making something from nothing, Sam explained. Every piece of metal, every component, every spare part gets reused until it falls apart completely. In the cultural center, they met Chaplain Chris Taylor, who held religious services for people of many different faiths. Faith takes many forms on the Endurance, he explained. Some people believe in traditional religions, others put their faith in science or in each other, but everyone believes in something. The aliens attended an evening gathering where the entire community came together. Children performed music on instruments made from ship parts. Adults shared stories and poems. Elderly people taught traditional crafts to the young. This happens every night, Morrison explained. No matter how hard the fighting was during the day, we always come together as a community. Dr. Yixtal watched a group of teenagers performing a dance that told the story of leaving Earth and searching for a new home. Their movements were graceful and full of hope, even though they danced on metal floors under artificial lights. How do you maintain your humanity under these conditions? She asked Morrison. Morrison smiled sadly. By remembering what we're fighting for. We're not just trying to survive. We're trying to preserve everything that makes us human. Our culture, our dreams, our love for each other. A young woman approached them. She was perhaps 25, with the confident bearing of someone trained for leadership. Captain, the evening patrol reports are ready. Thank you, Helen Garcia, Morrison replied. Helen is training to take command someday. The next generation has to be ready to lead. Helen studied the alien visitors with intelligent eyes. What's it like out there? In the galaxy, I mean. Are there really worlds where children can play outside under open sky? Yes, Dr. Yixtal replied. Many such worlds. Then we're doing the right thing, Helen said firmly. All of this, the fighting, the sacrifice, the endless journey. It's worth it if our children can have that someday. As the evening wound down, the aliens found themselves deeply moved by what they had witnessed. These humans had created a functioning society under impossible conditions. They had raised children who were both warriors and dreamers. They had maintained their culture and values through 1,000 years of conflict. There's one more thing you need to see, Morrison said as the community gathering ended. Something that will help you understand why we can never give up. He led them to a special section of the ship they hadn't visited before. The room was filled with displays showing images, videos, and artifacts from Earth. But more importantly, it contained detailed plans and dreams for the colony they hoped to build someday. This is our future, Morrison said simply. Every person on this ship has contributed to these plans. The cities we'll build, the schools where our children will learn, the parks where they'll play. We've designed a world we've never seen, based on memories of a world we'll never see again. Dr. Yixtal studied the beautiful drawings and detailed blueprints. They showed a society that would be both advanced and peaceful, combining the best of human technology with the wisdom earned through centuries of struggle. It's beautiful, she said softly. It's what we're really fighting for, Morrison replied. Not just to survive, but to create something worthy of all this sacrifice. The aliens understood now. These humans weren't just refugees fleeing a destroyed world. They were the guardians of humanity's future, carrying everything precious about their species toward a new beginning, and they would not be stopped. The next morning, Dr. Yixtal and her team gathered in the Endurance's main operations center with Captain Morrison and his senior staff. The alien scientist had spent the night analyzing everything they had learned, and she was ready to make an offer that could change everything. Captain Morrison, she began formally, the galactic hegemony has the technology to end your conflict. We can eliminate the corrupted infection completely. The room fell silent. Chief Engineer Lisa Carter, Lieutenant Ben Clark, and the other human officers looked at each other with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Morrison studied Dr. Yixtal carefully. What would that involve? Our medical technology can target and destroy the devourer infection at the cellular level, Dr. Yixtal explained. The process would be painless for the infected, but it would be permanent. The infection cannot be removed without ending the host's life. The weight of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. She was offering to end their 1,000-year war by killing half the people on their ship. Lisa Carter was the first to speak. You're talking about murdering 15,000 people. I'm talking about freeing 15,000 people from an infection that has trapped them for generations, Dr. Yixtal replied. and saving the other 15,000 from endless war. Morrison stood up and walked to the large display showing the ship's status. Red and green zones still marked the eternal battle between the two sides. Have you discussed this with the corrupted? We were hoping you would help us approach them, Korthak said. Surely they would welcome an end to their suffering. Let's find out, Morrison said grimly. He activated the communication system. Commander Hayes, this is Morrison. We need to talk. The response came quickly. I'm listening, Jake. Our alien visitors have made us an offer. They can end the infection, but it would mean death for everyone who carries it. There was a long pause before Hayes responded. I see, and you're asking for my opinion on whether my people should accept voluntary extinction. Dr. Yixtal leaned toward the communicator. Commander Hayes, this is Dr. Yixtal. The infected are suffering every day, fighting against urges they never chose. We can end that suffering. Hayes's laugh was bitter. Doctor, you don't understand. Yes, we fight the hunger every day, but we're still alive. We still love our families, even if we can't be with them. We still hope for a better future. Morrison asked the question that had been troubling him. Ryan, what do your people want? We want what everyone wants, Jake. We want to live. We want to see the new world when we find it. We want to be part of building something beautiful. A new voice came through the communicator, a woman's voice, younger than Hayes. This is Dr. Janet Miller. I speak for our medical council. We've been working on controlling the infection for 200 years. Some of us have learned to go months without feeding. We're getting better at being human, Lisa Carter gasped. Janet? Janet Miller from engineering? Hello, Lisa. Yes, it's me. I was infected 12 years ago, but I'm still me. I still remember working with you on the reactor upgrades. The pain in Lisa's voice was clear. We thought you were dead. I am changed, but I'm not dead, and I don't want to be. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, weighing an impossible decision. When he opened them, he looked directly at Dr. Yixtal. Doctor, we appreciate your offer, but we have to decline. This alien scientist looked shocked. Captain, you're condemning your people to eternal war. No, said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Lieutenant Helen Garcia entering with several other young officers. He's preserving our choice to find another way. Helen stepped forward confidently. I'm sorry for interrupting, but this decision affects my generation more than anyone else. We're the ones who will have to live with the consequences. Morrison nodded for her to continue. Helen addressed the aliens directly. You see our situation as a problem to be solved, but we see it as who we are. The conflict has shaped us, made us stronger, more united than we ever could have been in peace. Lieutenant Sam Torres joined her. The struggle has given us purpose. It's taught us that some things are worth fighting for, but also that some people are worth saving even when they're dangerous. Chief Security Officer Tony Martinez added, Our ancestors could have jettisoned the infected sections into space 1,000 years ago. They chose not to because they believed every human life has value, even the changed ones. Dr. Yixtal tried to understand. But you could have peace. Your children could grow up without war. Our children are growing up to be the strongest, most compassionate humans who have ever lived, Helen replied. They know how to fight when they must, but they also know when to show mercy. Amy Foster, the young sergeant, had been listening quietly. Now she stepped forward. Doctor, my great-grandmother was infected. She fought the hunger every day until she died of old age. She never hurt anyone. If your cure had been available, she would have died centuries ago, and I would never have existed. Morrison turned to his senior staff. This has to be a consensus decision. Everyone gets a vote. One by one, they voted. Lisa Carter, despite her grief over her lost colleague, voted to decline the cure. Ben Clark, Tony Martinez, Sam Torres, all voted to continue their impossible struggle rather than end it through genocide. Finally, Morrison voted. We decline your generous offer, Dr. Yixtal, but we have a different request. What can we do? For you? The alien scientist asked. Help us find a world, Morrison said simply. A world where both sides can live, where we can continue to search for a real cure, where our children can build something worthy of all this sacrifice. Dr. Yixtal consulted with her team privately for several minutes. When they returned, she looked both puzzled and impressed. We can do better than that, she said. Our star charts show a system about 6 months' travel from here. 3 habitable worlds, with enough space for both populations to establish separate colonies if necessary. Morrison's face lit up with hope. You would guide us there? More than that, Dr. Yixtal replied. The Galactic Hegemony would be honored to provide escort and support for your settlement. What you've accomplished here, maintaining your humanity under impossible conditions, is something our civilization needs to learn from. Commander Hayes's voice came through the communicator. Jake, are you serious? An end to the wandering? If you're willing, Ryan. 3 worlds, enough space for all of us. We could stop fighting over living space and start fighting side by side against real problems. My people accept, Hayes said immediately. When do we leave? 3 months later, the Endurance approached the new star system with an escort of hegemony ships. The aliens watched in amazement as both human populations worked together to prepare for planetfall. The 1,000-year war hadn't ended, but it had transformed into something else, a shared struggle to build something better. Dr. Yixtal stood on the bridge of her research vessel, observing the massive human ship as it prepared for its final landing. Captain Morrison had invited her to witness their first steps on solid ground in over a millennium. I still don't understand how you maintained hope for so long, she said to Morrison over the communication link. Morrison's voice came back clear and strong. Because hope isn't about knowing you'll succeed, Doctor. Hope is about believing that the struggle itself has meaning. The Endurance entered the atmosphere of the second planet, a world with vast continents and deep blue oceans. For the first time in 1,000 years, human children would breathe unfiltered air and feel real sunlight on their faces. But the most remarkable thing wasn't that their journey was ending. It was that they had arrived still human, still caring for each other, still ready to build something beautiful from the ashes of their long war. As Amy Foster, now trained as a pilot, guided the great ship toward the surface, she spoke for all of them. We made it. All of us. The journey is over, but the real work is just beginning. The Endurance touched down in a broad valley between 2 mountain ranges. Within hours, both human populations were working together to establish their first settlement. The infected and the uninfected side by side, building homes for their children under an alien sun. Dr. Yixtal would spend the next year studying the human colony, documenting how they adapted their 1,000-year-old culture to a new world. She would write reports that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity, not as just another species, but as beings capable of transforming any challenge into an opportunity for growth. But that night, as she watched human children play and reel dirt for the first time in their lives, she understood something profound about the species she had encountered. They hadn't survived their ordeal despite their compassion and hope. They had survived because of it. The war between the 2 human populations continued on their new world, but it was different now. It had become a contest to see who could contribute more to their shared society, who could solve problems more creatively, who could better prepare their children for the future. They had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. They had made war itself into an act of love, and in doing so they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human.